Howdy, howdy, this is Mr. Potter. In our previous video, we kind of laid the foundations for our stack calculator. So real quick, I just want to cover what we talked about in our previous video. We talked about how to tell if a character is a digit or if it is an operator. So we've wrote both of these methods that are going to return true if it is a digit or true if it is an operator and false otherwise. We talked about how to get the precedence of an operator. Remember that addition and subtraction are going to have the lowest precedence. Multiplication and division are going to have the next highest precedence. And open and close parentheses, because we resolve evaluations of parentheses first, those are going to have the highest precedence. So I need to make sure that I can determine when an operator has a higher precedence with another operator. And we took care of that in our previous video. And the last thing we did is we actually talked about, okay, how do I operate on these numbers? In other words, if I have a 3 and a 4 on my vowels stack, and I have a plus on my ops stack, how do I do 3 plus 4 if I don't have an expression, but instead I have parameters being passed to a function? And we talked about all of that in our previous video. We wrote the code for it. What we have to do today is we actually have to take care of calculations. In other words, given a string, we're going to have to set up some type of loop that's going to go char by char through the string, putting stuff into the vowels stack or putting stuff into the ops stack, maybe even building a multi-digit number. And of course, figuring out, oh, a multiplication has higher precedence than addition does, so I need to make sure this calculation gets done before this calculation gets done. All of this is what we're going to cover into today's video. So let's get to our IDE. So this is what we did last time. Again, we wrote our isDigit method that just basically checks if our character lies between the character 0 or the character 9. We have our isOp, which checks to see if it's a plus, minus, and so forth. We have our getPrecedence, which is just a switch statement giving us the appropriate number, a low number for low precedence, a high number for high precedence, and then actually operating on either adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to evaluate a string. So we're going to have int evaluate for some string s. And this is going to be the actual work that we're going to be doing. So the first thing that's going to happen is I need to create a stack of type int, which I'm calling vowels, and I'm going to create a stack of type char, which I'm going to call ops. So all of my operators are going to be in ops. All of my values are going to be in vowels. And I'm going to be reading these from a loop one at a time, so I need to build a value. So I'm going to say int val gets 0, because at this point I don't know what it is. And because I'm going through a string one char at a time, I'm going to have to keep track of my position in the string, which is also going to start at 0. And now I need to actually process the string. So while pos is less than s.length, I'm going to do the following. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the spot, get the letter at that particular position. And it's going to be whatever is in my array pos. Because remember, for us, a string is really just an array of chars. And then I need to say, if it's a digit, then I need to build the number. So if isDigit for spot, then I need to physically build that number. Now, remember what we talked about. We talked about that if I saw a 369 in a string, then if I'm going char by char, the first thing I'm going to see is a 3. Then when I see a 6, I'm like, oh, my number's not just a 3. We talked about how if I multiply it by 10 and then add that 6, that's going to give me the 36. And then I read this next digit and I'm like, oh, it's not 36. I need to multiply it by 10, which gives me 360, and then add the 9. And that's going to give me 369. And as soon as I see that there's nothing else past this, I know that that's going to be what I push onto my vowel stack. So right here, I actually need to build an integer. So I'm going to get rid of this. Come on, let's get rid of it. All right. So we're going to say that val is going to get val times 10, and I'm going to add to it whatever spot is. But remember that spot is a char. And a 0 actually has an ASCII value or a Unicode value of 48. So I'm going to need to take, cast as an int, whatever spot is minus whatever a 0 is. And so that's going to give me what I want. It's going to multiply by 10 and then add the integer value that the char represents. So if it's a digit, I want to do this. Else, if it's a operator, so is op for spot. If it's an operator, then I want to do something else. And this is actually going to be the big part of my code. So I'm going to leave this for a second. And I want to get to what happens at the end. After I've done this, I'm going to go ahead and just move my position to the next place. And that's going to be the last thing I do inside of this while loop. All right, so I said I would be back here. The first thing I need to take care of is, if it's an open parentheses, then I know something's happened. First, I know that the next thing I should see, if it's an open parentheses, is a number. So I want to stop the previous number and put it on the stack. So I'm going to say, if it's an open parentheses, then I want to do ops.push whatever spot happens to be. I want to take this parentheses and put it on the stack, because hopefully I'll see a closed parentheses later on that matches it. And this is the end of my value, so val gets 0. And we're actually going to see this code quite a bit. Every time that I'm putting an operator on the stack, that means I must be done with the previous number, and so I need to reset it back to 0, so that the next time I receive a integer is a digit, I'm going to take 0 times 10, which gives me 0, and then add whatever that value is. So that'll give me the 3 if I see a 3 coming up first. So this takes care of if that is an open parentheses. Excuse me. I forgot something here. Let me take care of that real quick. That was ugly. All right. So if we're an operator, first thing I want to do is I want to say, is this a open parentheses? And if it's an open parentheses, then I want to go ahead and push that open parentheses onto the operator stack. And I want to set my value equal to 0. I'm finished with this value, and I'm moving on to the next value. Well, let's see. If it's not an open parentheses, maybe I've got the situation that vals is empty. And if vals is empty, that means this is the first operator that I've received, and so I'm ready to take whatever the current val is and push it on my stack. And then I need to push the operator on the stack, and then set val equal to 0. So I want to demonstrate what this would look like. Remember that I have an ops stack and I have a val stack. If I'm doing a problem like 3 plus 4 plus 5, I hit the 3 and then I hit this plus, and the first thing I do, was it an open parentheses? Well, no, it's not an open parentheses. But is vowels empty? Yeah, vowels is empty, which means this is going to go on the stack no matter what. I'm not going to have to do any calculations to figure out, is this part of a larger calculation? Do I need to worry about the precedence? No, I'm just putting something on the stack. And I'm going to put the plus on the stack because this is my first operator. It has to go on the stack before I can evaluate it as part of some bigger calculation. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm setting vowels and I'm pushing my current value on, whatever my current value is so far. I'm adding the operator to my operator stack, and then I'm resetting my number. Okay. Else, if my spot is equal to a close parentheses. Now, if this is true, if I've hit a close parentheses, there must have been an open parentheses a while back. So if I've hit a close parentheses, I've got something like this, where I've got 3 times 4 plus 5. So let's talk about what would happen here. Vowels would get a 3. Operator would get a times. Then operator would get an open parentheses. Vowels would get a 4. Plus would be pushed on the stack. 5, I'm going to look at this, and the precedence here is 1, the precedence here is 3, so I'm going to push it on the stack. And then I've got the closed parentheses. And this closed parentheses matches an open parentheses. So I'm going to need to make sure that this 5 actually gets put on the stack. So I'm going to do vowels.push val. And then I'm going to have to keep going as long as whatever is on ops is not equal to an open parentheses. In other words, I'm going to have to keep going through these calculations. Excuse me. I'm going to have to keep going through these calculations until I get back to this open parentheses, which means I need to evaluate this 5 plus 4. So I'm going to go through this process. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the variable. So spot is going to be equal to ops.pop. I'm going to get the operator, which is this plus sign. I'm going to say val gets vowels.pop. And that's going to be the 5. But then I also need to get the previous number. Prev, which I'm going to call int prev, gets vowels.pop. So I have to get that previous number. I need to get that 4 off the stack as well. And then I want to calculate. So I'm going to say val is going to get whatever operate is for prev, for val, and for spot. And I mentioned this before, that when I'm doing these pops, the first number here is actually going to be the second number in my operate expression. The first number, or the second number that I pop, has to be the first number in that expression. Because if I had a problem like 3 minus 4, the 3 is going to get pushed, the minus gets pushed, and then the 4 gets pushed. Notice that the 3, my subtrahend, or the thing I'm subtracting from, is deeper in the stack than my minuend, or the thing that I'm subtracting. So I need to take care to put that in there. And then finally, whatever I get, 5 plus 4 is 9. Well, I need to push a 9 on the stack. So I'm going to push a 9 on the stack, and I'm going to vowels.push whatever my answer is, whatever val is. And I'm going to keep doing that until I hit that open parentheses. Then I need to take off the open parentheses. So ops.pop, my open parentheses. And I don't really care about it. I'm not going to store it anywhere. So it's actually going to get lost in the ether here. But I actually need to do the same thing with vowels. Because when I do this, I'm actually going to have 2 copies of it on the stack. And my variable val is going to have a copy of it. So this is the one time in this program where I'm not going to say val gets 0. I'm done with this. All right, those are my special cases, which means now I'm ready for a final else. So if I have an open parentheses, that's a special case. If it's the very first number I've ever seen, it's a special case. If I have a closed parentheses, it's a special case. It's only now where I actually have to say, okay, is the precedence different? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if, or I'm going to get prev is going to be ops.peak. Keep in mind for what I've got right now, val is whatever the previous calculation, the previous number we peeled off so far, and spot is the operator that we're just reading. And I want to compare it to the previous operator. So prev is my previous operator. And I'm going to say if get precedence for spot is greater than get precedence for prev. What I've really got here is this is the situation where I've got a 3 plus 4 times 5, where the spot that I just read has a higher precedence than what I just peeked at, what was on the stack. 3 plus 4, now I've got this times, which is higher than this. And if that's true, then I just want to push, and then reset my val to 0. So we're going to do that real quick. So if that's true, 3 things I'm going to do. I want to vals.push whatever val is. I want to ops.push whatever op is, or whatever spot is, I should say. And then I want to set val to 0. I don't know why I put 2 L's, just val. So in other words, I'm going to, when I'm doing this problem, this is val, and this is spot, and this is prev. Notice that spot has a higher precedence than prev does, so the star gets put on here, the 4 gets pushed on here, and now I'm ready to read this 5. Of course, if I don't have that situation, then something else has to be done. If I don't have that situation, then I need to actually do the calculation. So this is this type of problem. This is going to be 3 times 4 plus 5. So I've pushed a 3, I pushed the times, I've pushed the 4, and now val is the 4, spot is my plus sign, and I peeked and multiplication gets done first. So all I need to do is I need to complete this before the plus is going to go on the stack. So I need to complete that before I push the plus onto the stack. So I need to do the calculation. So I'm going to say int prevval is going to get whatever vals.pop is. I'm going to get the previous val. For us, that's this 3. I'm going to say int prevop is going to be ops.pop. That's going to be the asterisk that I pulled off. And then I'm going to say prevval is going to get whatever I get when I operate on prevval val and prevop. Now I'm keeping track of prevop. Prevop is this previous operator here because spot is the current operator that I'm working on. Then I want to push the result, so I'm going to do vals.push whatever prevval is, the result of my calculation. Ops.push whatever my operator is, which is spot, and then val gets 0. So in other words, what's going to happen here is I'm going to pop off the star, I'm going to pop off the 3, I'm going to evaluate 3 times 4, which is 12. That's going to be put on the stack. The plus is going to be put on the stack. and then I'm ready to keep going here. So now I'm going to read this 5, and that 5 is going to be part of some new calculation. All right, so this is our calculation. This is our evaluating this string, and it's pretty complex. So let's talk about what we're doing real quick before we write our main method. So as long as we have stuff to read, I'm going to read a character off. If it's a digit, I'm going to build a number. If it's an operator, then I'm going to do some calculation stuff. I had 3 special cases that we talked about. If I have an open parentheses, if I have a closed parentheses, or if it's the first calculation, the first time anything's been added to the vowels stack. Otherwise, I have something on the vowel stack and I've got something on the operator stack, so I'm ready to do a calculation. So I'm going to have to check the precedence, and I'm either going to do the calculation with the value that I have, or I'm going to do the calculation with whatever the previous value is on the stack if I have to do that value first. Great, but I have a situation where once I'm done with this while loop, once I'm done with this string, it's possible that I could have extra stuff on the stack. So I need to take care of that. So while not ops is empty, so as long as my operator stack isn't empty, I want to pop it off. I want to pop 2 numbers off, and then I want to check the value. So I'm going to say int prev is going to get vowels.pop. I'm going to say char spot is going to be equal to ops.pop. And then val is going to be whatever I operate on prev, val, and spot. And notice that at this point I'm keeping a running total in val. Val is my answer. So if val is my answer, then I want to return val. So this is my evaluate. So now I'm ready to create a main. So I'm going to start by compiling this, just making sure that it compiles. Now, because I don't have a main written, if it doesn't compile, I'm going to get a very peculiar error message, which we'll talk about. So I want to compile calculator.cpp. Okay, I got a few errors. Let's see what we've got here. If vowels.is empty, and that is a function I need to write on line 69. So if vowels.is empty with parentheses. 7226 op was not declared in the scope, and I knew I'd do that at least one time. That should be spot. Spot is the character. And then on line 110 it says expected a semicolon, and I think I just forgot the semicolon here on the pause plus plus. Alright, so let's save that. Let's recompile. And yeah, I've got this error message that basically says that it undefined reference to main. It couldn't find what main was. So we need to write our main method, and we're going to do that in a main file. So I'm going to call this file calcmain. And we're going to run our program. So we're going to include iostream, and we're going to include calculator.cpp. And we're going to be using namespace std. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to see out the result of evaluate for this string, 3 plus 4 plus 5. Now we know that 3 plus 4 is 7 and 7 plus 5 is 12, so we should get a 12 out of that. So we're going to do the same thing with 3 times 4 plus 5. And I know that 3 times 4 is 12, 12 plus 5 is 17. We're going to do the same thing with 3 plus 4 times 5. And we know that that should give us 4 times 5, which is 20, plus 3, which is 23. We're going to evaluate something a little bit more complicated, let's go ahead and do 3 plus 4 times 5. So now it's testing the parentheses. So 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 times 5 is 35. So let's try that and see if this works the way that we expected. So we're going to compile calcmain.cpp. We're going to output it to calcmain.exe. That looks good. Let's try and run calcmain and see if we get the answers we're expecting. We got 12, we got 17, we got 23, and we got 20. That's not good, which means we're not handling the parentheses correctly. So let's see, let me erase what I've got written over here. And we're going to trace through this code and see what we have that's not working correctly. So we have parentheses 3 plus 4 close parentheses times 5. All right, so let's evaluate what we're doing. Let's trace through our code. All right, so my string is this. Spot is at the open parentheses. It's not a digit, but it is an operator. It is this situation. So in my ops stack, I'm going to be putting an open parentheses. My vals stack is empty because there have been no values up to this point. And I'm going to reset val as 0. So val is 0. Now I've completed this. I've completed all of this. Did I have that in the right spot? Let's see. Yeah, so pause plus plus. So now I'm at this position, 3. 3 is a digit. Val is going to get 0 times 10 plus 3, so now val is 3. The next thing I've got is a plus. Go through here. Plus is an operator. It's not an open parentheses. Vals is empty. So we're going to push whatever val is. We're going to push the plus, and then val is reset to 0. The next spot that we have is the 4, which is a digit. So now val is 4. The next thing we've got is the close parentheses. So this is my close parentheses. So I'm going to push the 4. And then ops.peak, which is right here, that's not a open parentheses. So I want to pop the plus. I want to pop the 4. I want to pop the 3. And this is what's being passed to operate. So 3 plus 4 is 7. By the way, I've been popping, so that's gone, and that's gone. And I'm pushing a 7. And by the way, val is currently 7. Now, I peek, I see a parentheses, so we're done with the loop. So now we're going to scroll down. Ops.pop, so I'm going to take this off the stack now. And vals.pop, which means I'm taking off the 7. And I'm wondering if that's going to have a problem. I know val still has 7, but vals is empty. So now I'm going to go back up here, and I think I see what the issue is going to be. While pause is less than s.length, still true because now we're at this multiplication. Val is currently 7. I've got a times, and that's this vals is empty. So I'm going to push val on here. I'm going to push the spot on here. And now val is 0. And now we're at the last spot. We're at the 5. So now val is 0 times 10 plus 5. So now val is 5. And now I'm out of this loop. Pause is now past the 5. So now I'm ready to do the work afterwards. So while it's not empty, I currently have a val 4, val 5. Prev is going to be whatever I get when I pop 7. And I'm going to have 7 times 5. And that's what val is going to be. That's weird. I should have gotten that right. What silly mistake did I do? All right, so what I want to do is I want to talk about how I found my error. So what I did inside each of these if statements is I put a cout in here. So inside my open parens, I put open parens. Inside my is empty, I put empty stack. And I also printed out what the val was at each of these instances. So when I ran this, here's what I got. So what I should have is when I look at open parentheses 3 plus 4 close parentheses times 5, the open parentheses should go on op. Then the 3 is in val, so val should be 3. Then I've got the plus, and my vals is empty, so a 3 should be pushed on here, and a plus should be pushed on here. Then I've got a 4, so val is 4. Then I've got a closed parentheses, which means I'm looking for the open parentheses. I pop and pop. That gives me 7, and I push 7 on. And then I pop this off, and I pop this off. So val is currently 7, and this is still empty, as is this. I get this multiplication, so it's an empty stack, so I push the 7 on, and I push the multiplication on, and set val to 0. Then I've got this 5, so I go ahead and push that on, and 7 times 5 should give me 35. The issue is that I'm doing this here. Notice that val was supposed to be 3 at some point when I have that empty stack. And the reason for that, let me go to here, the reason for that is because this should have been an else if. Remember that this is supposed to be this chain of if, else, else, and it's supposed to be a whole chain of else's. I forgot the else here, my bad. So if I save that, I compile, and I run, notice now I get that 35 that I'm expecting. Okay, so little mistake on my part, line 70, I should have put an else in front of that if. My bad, I apologize for that, but now it appears to be working. So what I'd like you to do is experiment with this. Try and put in some more parentheses in here. Try and work with maxint or minint and see if those give you the results you expect or the results that you believe should be true. So once again, this is Mr. Potter. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.